your introduction.
Okay, we got it.
Should
Okay.
we redo our intros?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm Layla. I'm from the East Bay, San Francisco Bay Area, and right now I live in San Francisco, and I hope to for many years.
I'm Maggie. I'm from the East Bay as well. I'm from Martinez.
I'm B. I'm from upstate New York, and I live in San Francisco.
I'm Trung. I just moved to the United States 2 years ago, so I see myself as a San Francisco because it's where I've been staying for the last 2 years.
Mhm. Okay, as for me, I'm originally from Mumbai, India, but I transferred to the University of SF because I just wanted to study finance, and I graduate this is my last semester now, so I graduate soon, and then I plan to come back. Mhm.
I'm Shirayu. I'm from Mumbai. I just graduated. This is my last semester too. I'm from Mumbai, India too.
Great. All right. Well, let's get started with the questions then.
Of course. I'm gonna pin your video here. So our first question that we have is we want to know about your Jewish identity. So if you could just tell us all that encompasses your Jewish identity, and we're going to spend hopefully about 5 minutes or so on each question.
Yeah.
I'm timing it. I have a
Okay.
stopwatch on, so.
So whoever's doing the timing, why don't you call at 4 minutes so we'll know that we need to wrap up, okay? So we
Sounds good.
so we want to get through all the questions. So so I was born in San Francisco, and I'm actually a fourth generation San Franciscan, which is fairly rare because our town is not that old. So it goes back to about about the mid 1850s when the gold rush happened. And I have interesting mix. My mother, I'm a fourth generation on my mother's side, and so she came from grew up at a Temple Emmanuel, which is a very large synagogue in San Francisco, but it was what was called ultra reform. It was very assimilated. It was started by German Jews, and their idea was that they would assimilate with society. My dad, however, came from Seattle, and he grew up in an Orthodox family. Are you familiar with the basic three areas of Judaism? Reform, conservative, and Orthodox. The Orthodox is the most conservative, if you will, the most right, and then the Reform is the most left. And then there's also Reconstructionism and some other branches, but the basic. So my mother and my father really were on two ends of it. And anyway, so I had my Jewish education also at Temple Emmanuel, a very large synagogue, and I was very interested in it. I was very interested in my classes there, and I was quite inspired by our rabbi. And he inspired me really to become a rabbi. So I did pursue that. I went to rabbinical school for 1 year in Los Angeles, and then one other year in Jerusalem. So I was able to spend a year in Israel, which was very exciting. But at that point, I decided I was going to drop out. I really didn't feel like the rabbinate was right for me. It wasn't what I wanted to pursue as a profession or a lifestyle. But what's good about Judaism is that you do not have to be a rabbi to be very committed as a Jew. We don't consider rabbis to be any higher, any closer to God, as some religions do with their priests and so on. Everybody is equal, and so one can be a very committed layperson, meaning non-clergy, non-rabbi, and that's basically what I have been over the years. So how are we doing on time?
Oh, we have 3 minutes. We have 1 more minute to go. We're done with 3 minutes, so we're one
Yeah.
more.
Okay, fine. So questions back in the minute that's left then, or to me?
We just have 40 seconds more to go, so
Yeah.
we can.
Okay, well, I just wondered if you had any reactions or questions you wanted to clarify. But basically, that's what I'm that's what I, that's kind of the basis, I guess, for the conversation. And we'll get to Shah Zahav later on, I think, in another question. So as to how I went there, how I came there. So
Yes.
May
Okay.
I ask the second question?
yes.
How has your oh
No time. We're out. 4 minutes.
Okay. I'm just
Yeah,
moving
so
on to
we're
the next
moving on to
question.
the next question for.
How has your Jewish identity developed from childhood to now?
Okay. Well, I covered some of that in the first question, but to continue that, I guess. So when I first came, I had actually had come out in Israel. It's where I had my first gay experience, and I consider that to be my so-called coming out. People have different dates that they think about as their coming out date. Some whether that's when they first realized they were gay, or maybe when they first had an experience, or there's various different ways that people measure that. But in any event, I had been thinking about that for quite a while, and in Israel, the opportunity arose, and I pursued it. And so so dropping out of rabbinical school did not have to do with my becoming gay. At that time, they would not ordain a gay person as a rabbi. Subsequently, there are many gay rabbis. In addition to Rabbi Angel, there are hundreds now. It's really quite amazing. And but that time they would not ordain you. But anyway, that wasn't the reason that I dropped out. I just felt it wasn't right for me. So when I came back to San Francisco, I came back to the city I'd grown up in, but I had a little different perspective on it, having come out as a gay man. And so I continued to go to services with my parents to Temple Emmanuel, etc. But then in the 70s, a few years after I'd come back, there was an item in the newspaper, and there was a columnist named Herb Cain, who wrote like a column every day about what was going on in town, and he said there's now a gay synagogue. And I thought, oh my gosh. And so I went to one of the first meetings of the synagogue, which was held in the basement of a church. So that was the beginnings of Shah Zahav, and that was 1978, I believe. And so then my at that point, I wasn't really comfortable being out with my Judaism. For high holidays, which are the holy days in the beginning of our new year in the fall, I would usually go to services with my parents at Temple Emmanuel, and I didn't go to services at Shah Zahav. And then of course I wanted to be with my parents anyway. But eventually I started going to both services. I'd go with my parents, and then that service ended early, and I'd go to Shah Zahav. And then eventually I stopped going to Temple Emmanuel altogether, and just went to Shah Zahav. So I became more and more connected with Shah Zahav, and as the years went on, and it really was part of a process of coming out, if you will, of feeling comfortable integrating my Judaism with my gayness. And that was it was a difficult thing to integrate the two, and so for me it was. And so that's and it's interesting because you may know that in the Orthodox religion, the men and the women sit separately. They don't sit together in synagogue, and they're separated by a curtain, or the women sit upstairs and the men sit downstairs. And the idea behind that was that the men should not be distracted looking at the women during the service because they want to pray, right? So what happens in a gay synagogue when the men are sitting with other men and the women are sitting with other women that they're attracted to? So kind of interesting. It poses an interesting issue. And that was kind of an issue for me. I didn't want to be sitting there during high holidays looking at some guy that I was attracted to. I wanted to be there to pray and so on. So I guess long and the short of it is that these two areas, were something that I had to gradually bring together and integrate. How are we doing on time? Any more time? You're muted.
Yeah, Simran, you're muted, but I think we probably can move on to the next question.
Okay.
All right. I meant to say we're done. We're done.
Okay.
Don't have-
So I can go ahead and ask again for the next one. And so this one is, what are some of the ideas, values, and reasons that you take pride in being Jewish?
Excuse me, let me clear my throat here. A minute. Well, Judaism, one of the primary tenets of Judaism is called Tikkun Olam, which in Hebrew means repairing the world. In other words, trying to set right in the world what is not right, and that can encompass all kinds of things, of course, but certainly it has to do with moral issues, racism, any kind of a social issue, and that is why I think Jews have been so much in the forefront of a lot of these movements. The Black Civil Rights Movement, for example, in America, there were so many Jews who were involved in it, in leadership alongside African Americans. And so, Jews, I think, have this strong feeling of tikkun olam, the need to repair the world, and so that is something that's very important to me, and that's really a major tenet of Judaism, and I think it's what interests me about it so much, because in some religions, I'm not an expert on world religions, but I know that, like in Christianity, for example, the afterlife is very important, and you are to lead a moral life and a good life. You don't want to sin, because if you sin, you will not go to heaven, and that's the belief. In Judaism, we don't think of it that way. We think of we don't have a heaven and hell concept. We have a concept of living your life well on earth and doing the moral thing and not sinning for now, not for later, but for your life now, and so it's it's a little different kind of what's the word I'm looking for, a tenet that the religion is based on. So that to me makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, that you live your life morally, and you try to repair the world, if you will, when you see things that are wrong, that you try to work to better them, to repair them. So that, I think that's the best way I can describe that, I think, quickly.
That was a great way to describe it. I appreciate you sharing that. And then next, we wanted to kind of move into learning about your LGBTQ plus identity, how you identify within that community, and I guess what parts of your life do you feel identify with that community, other than just your sexuality, your gender, things like that?
Yeah, well, LGBTQ, it really is a community, and certainly, especially in San Francisco, but now I think increasingly all over the world, as those communities grow, it really is a community, and it has all the aspects of that any community would have, like any ethnic community or whatever group you associate with. And I'm fortunate to have lived in the Castro district for many years, like almost 35 years, and that of course is one of the one of the major gay neighborhoods of the world. It was one of the earliest neighborhoods that where a lot of gay and lesbian and queer folks came and settled and built a neighborhood. And it's much more than just, stores with rainbow flags. It really is a community. It has the feeling of like a small town where you would go to this community and live in this community. And Harvey Milk, who famous, hopefully you know who he was. He was the first openly elected gay official in California. He used to call the Castro the gay village, and it really was like a village because I can remember, you walking down the street and you run into people and you stop and you exchange gossip and whatever. So it wasn't like living in a big town, in a big city. It was like living in a small town, and that's kind of the way I like to embrace LGBTQI life in terms of feeling a part of that community. I think of it as a family, and I feel an affinity for other folks who are in that family. It doesn't mean I like everybody. Of course you don't. You have your friends and so on, and of course there are elements of it that that don't relate to me. But that's true of any community, and so I very much relate to that feeling of being a part of something, and so Shahar Zahav is a wonderful extension of that because it's and we'll talk more about it, of course, as we go along, and it it has evolved beyond being a quote unquote gay shul, where she started out as into a much a synagogue that has a much broader appeal to a lot of people, and we'll probably get into talking more about that. But it's interesting that that we offered something as a synagogue, a community, whatever it was, that attracted other people who were not gay and who wanted to come and be with us. So, and I think it is that feeling of community that attracted folks, and that's that kind of the extension of the gay family, if you will. We have our gay families. You have your family of origin, and then you have your family of choice. Your friends, the people you choose to surround yourself with, and so for gay folks, a lot of times that's a gay family.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then I'm gonna also ask the next one, and then Shirayu is gonna go after that and ask after that one, and then if anyone else also wants to ask questions after Shirayu, we can all take turns or however it works. So adding on to you talking about your LGBTI identity, how did it develop from childhood until now? Was there a time in childhood that you knew that maybe like you weren't like as the same as the people around you, and kind of how has that evolved?
Yeah, that's always an interesting story. I think anybody you ask that question of any gay person. And by the way, when I say gay, I mean to include everybody. Okay, it's just the shorthand for LGBTQI. Okay, it's my first gay memory, the first thing that I can remember being attracted to another man was going to the circus when I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, maybe even younger than that, and I remember being attracted to the aerialists, who were in these tights and shirtless, right? And I had a program book, and I can remember, looking at the picture of the aerialists in the program book, over and over, and being attracted to that, and not really knowing. Of course, I didn't know what that was about, but it was my first attraction to a male figure, a male body, if you will. And I never thought I never thought of anything like that, amounting to anything. I didn't think that it meant, of course, I didn't know what gay was when I was 7 years old, but, and even later on, I didn't think of it as being that I was gay. But gradually, in college, I can remember having a conversation with my roommate, and he said to me, "Well, I think you're gay." And it never really occurred to me before that. And I got kind of upset about it. But the more I thought about it, it seemed like, well, gosh, maybe I am. And I started thinking back about how I'd always enjoyed male company and so on, and had attraction to other men. And so, although I never thought about it at the time as being that I was gay, when he posed the question, then I started to embrace it. And but all through college, I was pretty much closeted. Going on to graduate school, to rabbinical school in Los Angeles, again, I was basically closeted. But at that point, being away from home, I think I felt that I could explore being gay, and kind of secretly, that nobody would know about it, right? Whereas if I was home, it would be a little, living at home, let's say, would be a little bit harder. But so in LA, I started to explore it, and I didn't explore it very aggressively. I'm a very cautious person. I don't tend to jump in. I tend to put a toe in the water first to see what it feels like. And so I can remember there were areas in LA, this is 1968, 69, that were where gay men went to meet each other. Hollywood Boulevard, and other sort of side streets where they'd gather. And I can remember like coming across this, and thinking, gee, seems like there's a lot of guys hanging out here, but not really knowing what I was looking at. And then kind of figuring it out, but never having the nerve to actually try to meet anybody there. And so it wasn't until Israel, when I really was away from my family on the other side of the world, literally, that I kind of felt that I was really ready to come out. And so there I was, kind of aggressively looking for the opportunity. And one day I met somebody, and one thing led to another, and that was when I formally came out. And then coming back to San Francisco, I came back to a city where I had grown up, but it was kind of a new city for me because it was coming there as a gay man, and so many LGBTQ people have come to San Francisco to embrace their sexuality, but I was coming back to where I had grown up. And so I was pretty closeted. I lived with gay roommates. I had a partner for 7 years. My parents knew him and liked him, and then we broke up, and then I had another partner and various roommates. And when I finally came out to my parents, which was some years after that, they said, "Well, of course we knew." We suspected, and we loved Ron, and we knew that you and Ron were more than roommates, and so on, and so they were pretty good about it. But it was for my generation, I think it was more difficult to come out. There wasn't such, you didn't see gay everywhere. Today there's a lot of visibility for coming out and for embracing who you are as as an LGBTQ person. In those days there wasn't much support, so it was kind of scary, and I think there was a lot more hatred. You always were afraid that if you told somebody you were gay, they were going to not like you, disown you, and not be your friend, whatever. So.
Thank you for your answer on that. I loved hearing about that whole journey. And then Shirayu, you have the next question.
Thank you, Robert, for answering all of these questions. It's really, really inspiring, and how you're explaining all the questions. But if my questions are, so being part of the LGBTQ community. What are some of your core ideas and some core values and personal reasons that there's a sense of pride that instills in you for being part of the community through the ideas, values, and reasons?
Yeah, well, kind of what I was talking about before, this idea that uh, the value the idea that tikkun olam value in Judaism is also somewhat a value in LGBTQI communities, because I think that excuse me, you know, any we consider ourselves a minority, and so part of, you know, being a minority is fighting for the rights of other minorities, and so there's always been that political bent, I think, among queer communities, which kind of parallels the Jewish, you know, the Jewish value of tikkun olam. I'm not sure if I'm getting at exactly what you're asking here. Can you clarify a little bit the question?
I think you are. It's yeah, just kind of the reasons that you take pride in being part of the community, which, as you've
Yeah,
explained, it's the same kind of a lot of actions that the people in the community take.
overlapping values. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and also, I mean, it's more than that. It's a fun community, you know. It has a liveliness to it, and a level of fun about it. There's a lot of different elements of it, of course. You know, there's the whole uh, you know, the whole thing of, you know, drag queens and all the you know, it's playfulness. You know, the idea of playfulness, and which I think is very, very fun. And, you know, and making fun of ourselves sometimes, you know, is as gay folks. Uh, there's you know, it's a family, and I feel comfortable in that family, in that environment. Now, it's not to say that everybody who's gay, you know, I love. That's not the point. You know, there's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of people that, you know, do weird things. I think, oh, that's pretty crazy. But the point is, you know, that it's all part of the family, and just like any family, there's, you know, there's a great variety to it, and a great diversity to it. So but I think that's really fun, and, you know. You know, I was mentioned before how the synagogue has attracted uh, a great number of non-LGBTQI members, straight married couples with kids who come because they want their kids to be in our religious school, for example, because they like the values that the religious school teaches. But also, people say, well, how can you go to a, you know, to straight people? Why do you go to a gay synagogue? And a lot of them say, because we like the people. You know, it's a fun crowd. They're nice, they're interesting, they're intelligent. You know, it has a lot to offer. It has a strong sense of family, and so on and so forth. So you know, that I think that's part of how I relate to the community, is that idea that I feel comfortable in that. It's you know, it's a family. And you know, I think we all have these affinity groups that we relate to. They might be a professional organization, a professional society, or something that has to do with your, you know, with your work, or with the career you aspire to, or, you know, groups in school, or whatever it is. We all have those groups that we feel comfortable with, and so I think that's maybe the way to understand it. This is one
Definitely.
group. So.
And so kind of, you know, following up with that, and you've sort of introduced this idea already and the story of it, but when and how did your, you know, these two identities of being Jewish and in the
Yeah.
queer community have conflict? And like, how did you reconcile them to be well integrated as your identity involving both being Jewish and gay?
Yeah, yeah. And well, as I was mentioning before, initially when I came back to San Francisco, I went to high holiday services with my parents at Temple Emmanuel because I didn't want to be in an environment where I would be, attracted to other men, right, on the high holidays, which were the most holy days in Judaism. And so that was, I was trying to keep the two separated. And in the early years when I came back, I was not yet out to my folks. After a while, when more and more I came out to the folks, and more and more I got more comfortable relating to being gay and being Jewish, and I didn't see the conflict as being so important. And so I, then on high holidays, for example, I would go with my folks, and when their service ended at like 4 o'clock, then I would go to Shar Zahav for the ending service, that ended at 7. And so I got to do both, and I started feeling more comfortable doing that. And then eventually, once my folks passed away or weren't able to go to synagogue anymore, I just went to Shar Zahav exclusively for high holidays. And so that to me was that was a difficult line to bridge, because I just felt like hard to explain. It was difficult to integrate the two. I always felt that it was difficult to integrate the being gay and being Jewish, and so it was a gradual process of feeling more comfortable with it. And that's just the high holiday instance. That's just one instance, but it's kind of emblematic, if you will, of the shift that I was experiencing and looking to integrate. One of my favorite sayings from a Jewish philosopher, and I can't tell you who said it, was the best, or I don't know exactly how it's stated, but the gist of it is that what seems to be furthest apart is what you want to bring together. That's the sense of that. So what seems to be so far apart, being Jewish and being gay, you want to bring together and you want to integrate into one. And of course, I think it's true of everybody who has very diverse parts of their lives, of interests or whatever. It's difficult to embrace them separately. It's nice if you can bring them all together, and I think everybody can relate to that. That it's a bit of a struggle. So so it's a gradual process. Like I said, when I was in rabbinical school for the 2 years, there were I certainly knew other students who were gay, and some of them became rabbis and some of them didn't. But again, that was like two separate things at that time. And then gradually, the rabbinical school started. The first woman wasn't ordained as a rabbi until I think early 70s, something like that. And then gradually they started accepting openly gay folks to become rabbis. And in the Reform movement today, it seems like almost all the rabbis who are being ordained are either women or gay. It's kind of amazing. It just has really taken off. There's just, there's some fabulous women rabbis and some great gay rabbis, and some who are both, and it's a whole turnaround from what it was in the 60s, and when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s. It's really pretty amazing. So that really, like the temple that I grew up in, Temple Emmanuel, huge synagogue, 1,400 members or whatever it was, now has 2 gay rabbis. They have, I think, 4 or 5 rabbis, and 2 of them are gay. So it's kind of amazing. One's a man, one's a woman, and the woman's been there for many, many years. This idea that major mainstream synagogues now embrace gay clergy, really helps really supports this idea of bringing the two things together in my own mind. And I don't think that young people today maybe they don't have to struggle with it as much as we did in our generation, because there's so much more support for, for being gay. And it's not to say that there's not still a lot of hatred around it, and a lot of, and a lot of prejudice and all that, but there's also more and more acceptance of it, and uh, and that's due to the fact of people coming out, because coming out is when a lot of people say, oh, I don't know anybody who's gay, right? But then they know me, and if I'm not out to them, they think they don't know anybody who's gay. But when I am out to them, they say, oh, yeah, well, he's gay. Well, I'll be darned, and oh, that one too, and oh, she's a lesbian, and so that's so important. And it's been that's been so important. And the early gay rights advocates are always saying, you must come out, because that's the way that people will understand who you are,
Yeah, it starts with visibility.
Yeah,
And
that's
yeah.
right.
I think it must be, I mean, I can't imagine living through a time in your life where you've seen such a radical change of when you were younger to now, and especially within the church and the openness and acceptance to different identities. I know that's something, at least for, I think, those of us that grew up in the United States, which is more so than maybe other countries, more left-leaning, that it's, for us, we've kind of grown up with a lot of those, privileges, and that we are more accepting than maybe other places. And so that's really interesting that you have been able to see that. And so kind of following up, you've, mentioned Shahar Zahav, and so we want to know, we've heard, kind of how you heard about it and how you were led there and ended up there full time. But we'd love to know maybe like how your involvement has been with the congregation, and how, maybe you like your different involvement throughout your time
Yeah.
being a part of it.
Yeah, well, I've been involved in a lot of different ways. I been on the board twice, the board of directors twice, and I've never held an office beyond that. But I've done all kinds of projects and activities for them. I used to produce the annual board retreat, which we call the advance instead of the retreat. And the Catholics called it a retreat, so we called it an advance. And so I organized that for many years, and I've done all kinds of projects. When we did I used to be a video producer, and when we had our big anniversary event, we produced a video for the event, which I worked on, and now I'm doing projects that are sort of around this idea of what Rabbi Angel calls our queer elders, the idea of the sort of the passing on of history and of lifestyle, and not lifestyle, but of knowledge, if you will, the history of the congregation and so on, and the group of us, like the three folks who are on in this class with you, Alan and Irene and I, are in that group of the people who've been around a long time, and so some of what I'm doing now is this sort of passing on thing. For example, we're organizing our archives, and we have about 50 years worth of stuff in boxes. It's been literally in the attic and in the basement of the building, and never was organized. Minutes of board meetings and all kinds of history of the congregation. So there's a group of us who are all very senior members like myself, who've been around a long time, who have been working to organize that. So my engagement with the congregation has evolved over the years, and you know, there've been times when I've been less interested in it, and times when it, you know, more so. In the early years, it was very, I don't know if you know the expression ragtag. It was just very seat of the pants. You know, it was very disorganized. It was just a bunch of people coming together in this church basement to have services. We had a prayer book that was literally cut and pasted and Xerox. You know, we took prayers from all different books, all different prayer books, and there were a couple of other gay congregations already, so we took some of their prayers and we pasted them together to make our own prayer book. And we used that Xeroxed cut and paste prayer book for years and years before we had a real prayer book that we eventually created for ourselves. So, you know, in the early years, it was very, very disorganized, very informal. You know, they had what was called the Vaad, which is the governing board, like the board of directors, and there was a lot of dissent in terms of the direction for the synagogue, which way we should we do this, should we do that? We were all 70s radicals in those days. You know, we were all 20-something radicals, and so there was a lot of disagreement, and so it was difficult to be in that environment for a long time. The synagogue has over the years has become more sophisticated. It's become you know, we've grown up basically, you know, and we now have, I mean, we've had full-time rabbis for many, many years. You know, we have staff, we have a, you know, $1 million budget. I mean, it's become a big thing, and it's a long ways from a bunch of people, like a bunch meaning like 20, gathering in a church basement and passing around the hat to raise money for the budget, you know, which wasn't much. It was basically to rent the room, you know, and to Xerox the prayer books. That was about it. So, you know, I've seen a tremendous change, and you know, in the synagogue, and so that's so my engagement with it has changed and grown as we've gone along, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like it's as the synagogue has grown, you've grown with it, and
yeah,
all a big
and it's, you know, I take pride in it. It's something we built. It's something we built.
Yeah.
And they call us founding members. We're not the founder. The founders were 3 gay men, but the people who started coming in the early days are called the founding members. So
Right.
yeah.
So we have a little less than, I'd say, like 10 minutes now. And so we want to know, we have 2 more questions for that time. And so if you could give maybe like a quick rundown of what we should know maybe in preparation for attending the Shabbat services this Friday night.
Yes.
Because I
Good.
know I think I think none of us have ever participated before, and
Yeah.
we've never been to a synagogue.
Right. And you'll all be on Zoom, obviously. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I won't be with you, but hopefully next week I'll be with you on Zoom. I'm planning to be at the service in person tomorrow. Well, you will see on the Zoom, basically it's kind of a locked down shot, and you'll see the pulpit, and behind there is a stained glass doors, and that is called the Ark of the Covenant, and inside that cabinet are the Torah scrolls. The Torahs, you may have seen them, are the first 5 books of Moses, first 5 books of the Bible, and they're handwritten on scrolls, hand scribed, and then they're on these big scrolls that roll. And so every week we read a portion of that. It's called the Parsha, a portion of the first 5 books. And so over the course of a year, we get through the entire Torah, and then we start over again. So that's just the first 5 books of the Bible, of the Old Testament, which is called the Torah. So those are in that ark, and they probably won't open it. They usually don't read that on Friday night, so they won't open it, but you'll see it there. And above there is a light hanging, which is the eternal light, and every synagogue has that. It's a light that's supposed to be always on. the symbolism of the eternal light. The service, I don't know who's leading tomorrow, but many times our services are not led by the rabbi. I think you met Rabbi Copeland the other day, so she may or may not be there. Most synagogues have the rabbi or one of their rabbis on the pulpit for every service. But since we went for so many years without a rabbi, we developed a wonderful core of members who were knowledgeable and could lead services. And so we maintain that. Now that we have two clergy, we have a rabbi and a cantor. A cantor in Judaism is the someone who chants the prayers, and so now that we have two clergy, they are not necessarily always on the pulpit, and if they are, they're always there with a layperson co-leading. So I'm not sure what it'll be tomorrow, but it may just be two co-leaders who may neither of them may be the rabbi, or it might be the rabbi and a co-leader. But we're a little bit different in that regard, a little bit unique, because most synagogues you will always see the rabbi on the pulpit. Let's see what else I can tell you. The prayer book that we use. And I believe there's a copy online.
Yeah, we all have the copy of it too.
Good. Okay, excellent. Okay, great. Terrific. So Jewish prayer books open from the right to the left, whereas our normal books open from the left to the right. That's because the Hebrew is written from right to left. So as you read, it goes from right to left. So you open it from the back, basically. But the one you have, of course, won't be doing that. But in the prayer book, you'll see, and you probably have already seen this, that if you've seen some of the pages of it, all the prayers are in Hebrew and what's called transliterated Hebrew, which is the English pronunciation of the Hebrew. So you can, if you don't read Hebrew, you can read the transliteration and know how to follow along, and then the English translation. So every prayer you'll see it in three forms. And this is a prayer book that I talked about how we had cut and pasted and for so many years, and then other versions of it that we published ourselves, which are very simple, Xeroxed, put together with a spiral binding. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, that we actually created this prayer book. And it was created from all these other versions, plus a lot of other material that members wrote, and we're quite proud of the book. It was a big project that Rabbi Angel actually worked on, and she thinks, she looks at it as one of her major accomplishments with the synagogue, which it really is. And so what you'll see is something that has evolved over all these years into that actual book today, printed, nicely laid out, et cetera. So it's very sophisticated for us, considering how we started out with the cut and paste, and so we're quite proud of that. And if you browse, you have the book, so I would recommend that you browse through it a little bit in advance, see what's there. Just kind of go through it and get a sense of, you'll see, that there's a services for Friday night, there's services for Saturday morning, then there's other readings and so on, prayers for certain special occasions. There are a lot of special readings that are not part of the formal liturgy. There's a formal liturgy in Judaism, as there is in any religion, of how you pray, the order of prayers, and then beyond that, there's a lot of commentary and other readings that we've integrated to magnify the thoughts of the formal literature. So hopefully that'll be useful as you attend. And I think there will be somebody with you on Zoom who'll be able to answer questions and you'll talk about it afterwards and so on.
Yeah, I believe we're meeting in small groups again
Uh-huh.
during it. And so, but it sounds like we're in for a very interesting and like unique experience, and it'll probably pull together the different things we've been learning so far this week in this course.
Yeah, hopefully it will. Yeah.
And part of our, we've had a little bit of learning about the translations in the Siddur. We, part of our course is lessons with Mike Shriver, who's he's kind of explaining it all to us, all of the text, and helping us to understand how to queer the text. So it's interesting.
Yes.
But it was great. I think there was one more question that's actually just about feminism.
Yeah, well, good. I wanted to make one more comment too. Go ahead and ask the question. Maybe.
Yeah. So I don't know if the room might be closing in the next minute or so.
Yeah,
And so we also the next week's interview kind of goes a lot more into that, and so that might be so I don't think we have it looks like we're going to close in 60 seconds, so we might not have time now, but it's perfect for next week too. But so if you had anything else in the next 50 seconds.
Yeah, let me just say also that you'll notice that the liturgy, and you'll see this when you look in the prayer book, is all degenderized. In other words, none of it is he. It's neutral, or sometimes there'll be a male and a female gender. So the traditional Hebrew is all male oriented. So we have changed it to be either feminine language or sometimes a neutral language. Inclusivity is something that we as a synagogue worked on very early, and now is being followed really throughout Reform Judaism.
Well, thank you so much for all of your answers, and you'll see the recording soon too.
All right.
Directions.
There we go. There we are.
Hello, welcome back.